And welcome back to the next presentation of today's NWB High-Tech Engineering Conference. I'm happy to welcome Nicolas Bullwinkel, CEO and founder at Circus Group. A housekeeping note, the conference is being recorded and all participants are in a listen-only mode. If you have questions for the Q&A session, please submit them using the chat box. Now let's get started. Nicolas, the floor is yours.
Thanks a lot for having me and welcome to our session. So I'll give you a quick run through Circus and what we do at the Circus Group overall. So Circus Group is a company which focuses entirely on embodied AI solutions and fully autonomous systems for the food service sector. So what we're developing is basically the world's first fully autonomous canteen setup. So think about every complex process when it comes to large kitchen environments, from feeding people at care homes to food in airports, retail integrations, to tactical troop supply in the defense sector. We're basically building this as fully autonomous systems to take out the complexity and the manual labor work in that sector. A few facts on the company. I founded the company back in 2021 with a core focus of exactly solving these issues: food waste, labor shortage, and overall complexity in that sector. And today we have achieved to build something fairly unique, a true patented solution that we developed over the last 4 years to industrialize state and serial manufacturing status quo today. Working in partnership with a global manufacturer called Celestica. So our core business is developing technologies, not owning the factory, and we don't plan to do that, but really owning all the IP to then scale things with production partners on the hardware side. We're based in Munich, just moved headquarters here a few weeks ago, basically from Hamburg, and have offices across Germany, all based in Germany, built in Germany, and owned technology here. A few sentences on myself and the background. I'm more of a kid of delivery services. Prior to Circus, founded a company called Flink, which you might know also as an end consumer, which I founded back in 2020, 2019, around the time where the whole COVID situation hit the market, and where I was responsible to build software solutions and AI solutions for Flink to build a product that works entirely on a strong technology backbone to really guide tens of thousands of employees that we had and grew at the time. And the core idea of Circus is very similar: to really build technology that enables human labor to have less complexity in different environments and focus really on less repetitive tasks and more the creative parts. So we can really leverage right now cutting edge technologies to do that. Plus Fabian Becker, CFO, coming from the shipping industry, and Klaus as my co-CEO with a lot of background, prior leading Zwilling for a few years, Vega for over 10 years as CEO, who brings in the expertise on a global expansion scale. From a shareholder structure and a few words on how the company is capitalized, we raised roughly 60 million over the last year to fund our entire R&D stage. Today, I remain the largest shareholder of the company with a free float of roughly 35%. Raised our first institutional capital round earlier this year, which really made us feel a lot more home in the capital markets since we took the company public via direct listing roughly 1.5 years ago. Companies led today or driven by over 85 to 90 people, so really small condensed teams of international talent with strong leaders from automotive to retail, Zalando. Right now, one of the newest joiners, for example, Sasha, who joined as a general counsel from Helsing, Dr. Max Schwaller, who previously led the overall global commercial sector Rational. So a strong mix of really established and experienced leaders in that field to bring in all kinds of elements from the kitchen industry to really scalable production technology, as well as the defense sector. Just to mention a few of the last achievements over the last weeks. Overall, we achieved the overall patent grant for the technology, the core technology of the CA1, as well as completed our first units in serial production. We shipped first units of the CA1 back in 2022 in a beta phase to really understand the needs and all the nitty-gritty details of the technology. And at a certain point decide, okay, we're ready to scale it, bring it to serial production. And that's what we did over the last few months, with the first units basically right now being prepared to be deployed for customers. And the first launch customer will be Rewe, which will make cooking robots and the entire technology fully integrated into the retail sector for the first time ever. and create a fully autonomous touch points for people in their daily life, where you just go, talk to a robot, and get your fresh meal out basically in 2-3 minutes. In addition, we're growing heavily in the defense sector, developed a specialized product for that, which we'll see in a second, and also received NATO approval as well as approval from the Department of Defense for that already. So we're right now able to participate in all kinds of active biddings, tender processes, and active negotiations with a lot of parties, since right now, as you all know, defense is a hot market. There's a lot of capital that needs to be deployed, not only in drone technology, but as well in autonomous infrastructure and bringing more intelligence to the overall base infrastructure to fuel people, to make sure that there's a proper modern base behind complex operations. From an overall business model, how we build up the company is we came from software and we founded the company back in 2021 as a software company, very similar to the approach of Flink, building an entire operational system to reduce complexity in food service operations, from managing inventory to API connections to different wholesalers, managing hygiene regulations, recipes, everything that creates a certain complexity and needs skilled labor. And over time, we realized that's one big element, but we need to bring full autonomy to that sector. That's the only thing that will guarantee a certain fresh meal, a certain stability, and also a certain quality over the years to come, with more and more basically labor lacking in that industry. So today, it's kind of a razor blade model where we sell the entire OS, always paired with the hardware, where we sell the hardware, price point around 250,000 euros, always bundled with the OS, which goes around 8 to 12K on a monthly basis as a connected SaaS fee, which always goes together with the different elements tied together. So when you think about our margin structure, there is a healthy margin on the hardware, which is a good double-digit, but low double-digit percentage. But overall, the money is not made on the hardware. The hardware is really the infrastructure that we're putting in place, which also creates a nice, long-lasting relationship with our customers. The big margin is obviously on the software and AI services, where we have a margin above 80%, and that's really what the business model is growing with. As a flagship product, nevertheless, remains our CA1 as the core invention of the company over the last years, which you can imagine like a small container, roughly 8 square meters, where we bring together all elements that are basically powering an entire kitchen environment, from hygiene modules and dishwasher integrations to dispensing of the ingredients and all the control movements through the arms, cooking based on induction at the front of the robot, output trays, as well as a fully integrated point of sale system. So it gives the simplicity of a coffee machine or a vending machine. There's no additional services, no additional ventilation systems. All things you have are basically condensed in one unit, which has never been done before, creates a certain complexity, but also a true value for right now scaling for our customers. And when it comes to our customers, we're not addressing or jumping into competition against a small favorite Italian restaurant. We're targeting specifically infrastructure food providers, where food often is needed to sell or needed to offer, but not the core business. So thinking about hospitals, elderly care, even events, universities, schools, everything when it comes to the mobility and retail sector, where you already have a picture in your head about a sandwich that you buy at an airport, integration to supermarkets, residential living, a lot of cases on the commercial sector that we're addressing, where it's more about catering services. And looking at today's setups, it's often driven by 10 to 20 people in a condensed kitchen, operate in a lot of cases by different providers like Aramax or Dexo, Compass Group. So that's kind of our closer competition, where we create this or offer the same service, but on a pretty much technology-driven service and a fully industrialized automated solution. The fast growing sector that we developed right now over the last 2 years is something that really heated up right now over the past few months specifically, is our so-called CAM, which leverages the same core technology and our patents on the CA1 and the overall cooking and heating technology, but based on a 20-foot container with a lot more power, 40 output trays versus 8, 10 cooking stations versus 4. So this one is specifically designed to be placed outdoors, highly flexible, easy to transport, easy to set up, and basically the massive advancements when you compare towards manual field kitchen, which basically hasn't changed in the last 40, 50 years. And that's our answer to this as the very first product which delivers full autonomy, like not only on warfare and drone technology, but also when it comes to core infrastructure of fueling people, which is a base need that needs to be served every day, multiple times. And on this end, we're right now in negotiations and final negotiations also with a lot of parties, and expect to have really strong first news over the course of this year already, with a planned rollout over the next year and serial production already starting in the second half of next year, where we can definitely leverage the existing partnerships on production to get this up to hundreds and thousands of units in production fairly quickly. The overall structure is run by our OS, the core business of what we do for a margin structure, where it's all about integrating different AI services into the hardware and robotic infrastructure, right? So we're basically constantly upselling, developing towards that infrastructure, from overall system management and robotic control systems to autonomous compliance, HACCP hygiene regulations, which is today a true pain and a lot of manual work, to overall intelligence across the entire supply chain. So with thousands of data points that we're collecting from every meal that is being produced and served, we are basically getting a lot of knowledge, and always calling that kind of a culinary intelligence of what people eat, in what location, what needs to be purchased, how can we prevent food waste. All these answers and all these problems are basically solved through our own intelligence software, which are always combined with the hardware itself. And this goes together with an entire POS, which itself today creates a complex setup, but really in the market overall, which we completely integrate to really simplify things for customers through pre-ordering, direct order terminals, even to a point where we have different voice AI integrations, so you can even speak to the unit and order your food by just talking to a robot. And from a food offering perspective, I heard the term Thermomix on steroids or similar things quite often, and it's similar to what we can do based on the technology, right? So we're not doing pizzas, we're not doing burgers, but we do the other 90% of culinary offering that you can get around the world, from bowls to curries, salads, even a Kaiserschmarrn, a chili con carne, pastas, everything you can imagine that goes in a pot or a pan, which is basically moving through rotation, which really gives us endless possibilities of what we're able to serve, hot and cold, and customize it specifically to the needs of the person ordering the food. And right now, even opening that up as a platform, which you can think about similar to the App Store on your iPhone or on your Android phone, where we right now unlock creativity for different chefs, creators, influencers to create meals based on our infrastructure, and they can basically scale with us into the existing infrastructures that we're serving. To give an example, we've partnered up with Lukas Podolski and his famous kebab brand, which right now is the fastest growing food franchise brand across Europe. And we're right now bringing recipes from his brand, for example, into the launch with Rewe, right? So we're combining the platform, unlocking new opportunities for his brand to scale, and at the same time creating a great offering for our clients on ground to not only have dishes created by us, but also bring in strong brands. So you can basically have Tim Melzer cooking in for your employees in your canteen on a daily basis. And all of this is realized through a very strong setup that we built over the last years, from integrations and strong partnerships with Meta to integrations of electrical systems with Siemens, and at the very core, a production partnership with a company called Celestica, who's one of the largest contract manufacturers around the world. We partnered with them last year for a global setup of manufacturing. Today have the capabilities to produce up to 6,000 units per year. The first units just rolled off the high volume production line that we built up over the last 6 months. So been incredibly quick in scaling that up, and right now basically ramping up production capacities with rollout starting over the next weeks. The Rewe launch planned right now for end of October, which kind of marks the first highlight in really public accessibility, where it's not kind of more hidden into different cases, where it's more about employee catering, right? So different use cases that are not easy to access for everyone. With Rewe, that's different, and we can scale a fairly complex hardware product right now in production in a very strong speed as the first party who's reached that industrial state ever. The CA1 is like roughly 29,000 single pieces. That makes it as complex as manufacturing a small car. So there's a lot of intelligence, a lot of sensors, a lot of overall robotics technology in it to make it a fully autonomous device, which has a lot of IP in it that we created over the last years. And right now, with the ability to scale that, really driving up our pioneering and also first mover and market leading position globally. And overall on this, we came a long way, right? It's a deep tech product. It has a certain hardware element which brings in a lot of R&D time that we right now kind of ending with the deployment of the first units from the high volume production line, and right now basically getting to a more exciting stage of generating significant revenues in our first quarter right now in Q4 2025 with the rollout and obviously sales of the hardware, as well as the software revenues kicking in, which will already drive a significant portion of our revenues from that very first quarter, where we're completely on track, not only on our overall production, but also in terms of our guidance and capital spend, well funded and right now ready to scale up the customers that we basically built up in our backlog over the last years. And since a lot of these things always sound a bit like fiction, right? Is it there yet? Does it taste well? Like, how does it work? Whenever there's an interest, feel free to reach out to me directly, LinkedIn, mail, whatever suits you best. We're always happy to also welcome people over at our showroom. I think maybe a few people already did that. It's a technology that needs to be seen to be believed, since it sometimes feels a bit like the Star Trek food replicator. So very happy to show you around, also in our Munich offices. Thank you.
Great, Nicholas. Thank you very much for your introduction. And we already have a number of questions. And since you just invited investors to visit you in Munich, basically the first one is by somebody who's actually asking whether he can visit you on the 22nd of September. I would suggest he gets directly into contact with you to organize a meeting. But as you said, it's principally possible, and he seems to be a little bit skeptical, but maybe you can then convince him on your platform, your technology. Good. Sure. Sorry, were you about to say something?
Okay. No, good.
We have two questions on the CAM. The first one is, when do you think the first CAM will be shipped?
So we're right now planning with first deployments of the first half of next year and more volume production over the second half of the year. Which doesn't mean that we're excluding specifically the CA1 from military operations, right? So we also have right now demand for the CA1 to be placed in different operations. When you think about barracks and different buildings, we even have right now different intelligence services asking for the product, where it makes a lot of sense to not have third-party chefs coming into an office on a daily basis. So there will be a lot of development over the next quarters to come on this side. Right now is the current starting focus on the CA1, and the CAM to come next.
And the second question on the CAM is actually the other way around. Can you also imagine that the CAM can be used in other rugged non-military environments, like on construction sites or maybe, I don't know, remote sites somewhere?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, to give you a prime example, we have a partnership, and one of our clients is a company called Strabag, which you might know, one of the biggest construction companies in Europe and I think even globally. They're starting with the deployment of the CA1 into their offices for the overall corporate structure. But the next step would be also to address construction sites, which is kind of part of the overall partnership to jump into R&D of what the specific features are and the requirements on ground. And a construction site somehow is also comparable to the defense sector in a way when it comes to the needs and the structure on ground. So we're starting with defense because there's the most urgent demand, and it makes a lot of sense to address that market right now and to also have a certain focus on product development. But we'll definitely also scale the product over time to more sectors, be it construction sites, be it overall outdoor, thinking events, thinking overall disaster relief, where we already have active negotiations coming in. The product makes sense everywhere, where you can just drop a container and you don't need to set up an entire tent and a complex kitchen infrastructure.
Maybe a question directly relating to that. How many meals per hour can the robot produce and serve? And maybe is there a difference between the CA1 and the CAM in that respect?
Yes. So with a smaller CA1, we're around 80 to 100. So it is really more about the space efficiency, because the customers that we're addressing in the commercial sector, they really value their space, right? When you think about a Rewe, for example, every square meter is pure revenue. So we're trying to have the best output on the least amount of space. So right now, 8 to 100 meals on roughly 7.5 square meters. With a CAM, it's a very different ballgame. There we're talking about 300 to 350 meals an hour on like a bit more double the size on the footprint. So a lot higher output and like a lot more throughput on the overall structure.
Okay, you mentioned Rewe. Do you know where exactly in the stores Rewe wants to employ the CA1? So is it within the store space, or is it behind the cashier where you find the bakery and so on?
Yeah, good question. So we will launch with Rewe in the initial launch in October will be 2 stores in Düsseldorf, and then one more to come in Bonn. So end of October, you can explore it. We will actually run with different cases. So we have, for example, one robot which will be placed directly to the, let's say, meat and cheese area, right? So where you can get fresh products. We have one robot which will be placed directly at the entrance, where you have the fresh goods and normally the smoothies and like all these pre-packed goods. And we have a third one which is placed more or less at the exit, where you sometimes get like more like meat and sausages, right? So where you never have another food court area. So running with different scenarios to really get a good feeling of what the best and most intuitive way for customers is to get their meal.
And if these pilot units are deployed in October, when do you expect Rewe to kind of have a good understanding what works and what doesn't work?
So we defined a pilot which will run roughly until summer next year, right? So that's a good phase to test to also get a feeling for the adoption of the customers across different cities, regions, target audiences. So that's where we have more clarity on things. What I can tell you is that there's a lot of also time invest and resource investment going in from all of our pilot clients, including Rewe, to have a full integration. For example, with the Rewe partnership, we also have a national listing, right? So we can also make sure that we have a proper ingredient supply. So there's a lot of integration that is happening. So over Q1 and Q2, we will overall see a stronger rollout of all customers, where like with a very new technology, obviously everybody wants to start small and get a certain understanding of the integration and the workflow.
Very good, thank you. Next one is just a clarification. The margin of the software was 18 or 80%?
80.
80, 80, yes, that's what I thought. Very good. How many different type of meals can the robot produce in a typical setup?
So it depends a bit on what customers wants to do, right? So what we recommend and where we best at is to have a full day menu, right? So you have a breakfast bowl, you have a pasta, you have a salad, you have a dessert, and you run that for the whole day, but you can basically vary between different things. What we do have is 36 different silos of ingredients, and that kind of limits the capacities of what we can do. So we can hold ingredients for roughly 400 to 500 meals, and we try to have a menu that always doesn't get too complex, so you can also always serve a certain amount of a single meal. So we tend to go with 10 to 20 different variations on different meals, and then you can always customize and personalize the meals on top. But can obviously be changed on a daily basis, right? So there's a lot of flexibility when it comes to the menu structure overall.
Very good. There are a couple of questions on basically the early MOUs which you signed. So those were with Mangal, FLC Group, and Beijing. So let me just go through them. So there is one question asking about the status, the other about the, I think it was 8,000 pre-orders. What is their status? Are they legally binding purchase contracts with payment milestones? And what percentage do you realistically expect to deliver in the next 12 to 18 months? And there's another one asking whether these pre-orders are still existing. What is the current number of pre-orders, and what is the rollout plan for these pre-orders?
Yeah,
I think that's more or less the number of questions on this topic. Yeah.
So, I mean, on the pre-order structure, right, that's something that we build up overall to get a feeling for the demand, get a feeling for production, and you can have a certain pre-order book that you can basically right now leverage to be a bit more flexible of where do you want to scale, try to make sure that we not jump into multiple markets or multiple areas. So we build local clusters of how we want to scale. Specifically when it comes to the pre-order agreements on the European level. That's something that is progressing super fast. We have a few ones that are already converted, a few ones that you will already see over the next years, next month to come, right, and roll out also this year. So, for example, Sakura, City of Ingolstadt, which were all part of the backlog before. Same thing with the Mangal side. There will be more news over the next weeks. I think Marco, the MD, will also give some more insights next week when he's speaking at a different conference. So we've developed an entire new brand concept together with the company and together with Mangal itself to have not a brand that's Mangal, but more tailored towards the robotic technology overall. And what we're doing is also finding certain partners that right now want to scale with that brand, right? So, for example, the Mangal concept, which I think was always something that a lot of people were interested in, will scale as a franchise business, but also be integrated into other infrastructures. So think about gas stations and other cases where this one will be integrated instead of Starbucks. But it won't be us as a brand, but we're basically putting the Mangal brand on top to have a certain foot traffic driver and a certain brand awareness on the overall concept. When it comes to everything on the Chinese side, it's honestly a bit more difficult for us. We push that towards next year. There's a lot of demand and obviously a market that right now, based on adoption and also willingness to use robotics, is far ahead of the European market. But we see the opportunity in defense far bigger than that. And right now, you can imagine negotiating with companies like the US Army and even different NATO allies, at the same time rolling out China, creates a certain conflict in the negotiations. So what we do right now is we focus on the growth case on defense and not pushing too much on rolling out the Asian market at the same time.
Okay. Very concrete question. How many CA1 would you expect to be shipped in 2026?
So what we definitely know is that we will reach 3-digit. So already based on the production plans and also on the order book and deployment timelines, that's something that is already cleared from the forecast and the production.
Okay, perfect. 2 questions on food health and safety. So who is responsible, you or your customer, and how do you ensure food quality and safety?
So the most important thing, or when you look into the kitchens, right, what is something that is the blocker of hygiene? It's the human, right? It's dirty hands touching things, and it's the cooling chain. These are the 2 major issues in every kitchen environment or work environment where you have fresh food. So for us, there's no dirty hands, there's no human interacting with the food. And when you think about the cell, which is working as a closed system, we're cooling the entire cell from the inside. So you have 4 to 6 degrees in the entire unit, which makes it the most hygienic and most loved infrastructure from everybody who's checking on these hygiene regulations. And when it comes to the food input, we work with really strong partners on that, wholesalers, Metro, Transcommune, Chefs Culinary, right? So we're not reinventing the wheel when it comes to food supply, but leveraging integrations with food wholesalers. So we don't need to handle the food quality from the very source, but focusing on the operations and the hardware itself.
Maybe just an add-on to that, are the hurdles or the hygiene standards higher than in restaurants, which you have to comply with, or?
Actually, no. I mean, most of the hygiene standards are really built around the human in the kitchen, right? Where do you have to wash your hands? Where's the sink? How's the structure? How's ventilation? So that makes things a lot easier for us. At the very end, it's a stainless steel box. So from a hygiene environment perspective, it's very clean and secure. Nobody can touch it. No customer can interact, right? There's no open slots. There's no flies and bees coming in. All this kind of stuff is not able to happen. So we have the same restrictions and the same regulation when it comes to hygiene as a regular kitchen, but are handling things a bit differently and I think a bit easier than with having multiple humans running around.
Unfortunately, we don't have the time to answer all of the remaining open questions, so I'm just going to take the last one in chronological order. How do more than 100 customers operate the machine in 1 hour? Select the meal, pay, prepare, and receive. So isn't that getting very crowded, I guess, is the question in front of the robot.
So what you have is you have multiple meals cooking in parallel, right? So it's not basically one by one. So you have an output where you get fresh meals out basically every 20, 30 seconds easily, but we have multiple output trays. Right now we're working with 8. So we're kind of forcing also the customer to, when it's done, grab it and go, not working with complex pre-ordering structures. But you have things running in parallel. Which makes it also nice for a customer or a group of customers, when you order and you see, okay, all the 4 dishes are running in parallel. There's pasta next to a curry, next to a salad, and you all get it at the same time.
Okay, perfect. So sorry to everybody, we couldn't answer the question due to lack of time, but thank you again for all of the good questions, and thank you very much, Nicolas, for your deep insights. The next presentation is going to be by Gea, and we have put the link into the chat box, so if you want to join there, just click on the link. And for some final remarks, Nico, I'm going to hand over to you. Thank you again.
Yeah, thanks everyone for joining. I see there's a few open questions, so reach out to me on LinkedIn, ask your questions. Always very happy to answer or welcome you over here in Munich. On the overall CA1 launch dates, we will publish a few more insights. There will be also launch events when it comes to Raver. So like that is a point in a few weeks, basically, where you can just walk into Raver and explore it yourself, which will definitely create a good momentum for us. Thanks a lot for joining.